everyone, and welcome to this roundtable with the Carter Center. My name is Abir Pamuk, and I'm an Atlas Corps Fellow from Syria, and I'm serving with an organization called Spark Action that works on children's issues in New York. I'm coming to you from New York, and I have two amazing guests to introduce to you today, whom I'm chatting with. Our first, Anna Buffalo, she's the consultant for the Earth and Sacred Pipe Resource Center. And we also have Negat Dad, Executive Director of Digital Rights Foundation, is talking to us from Pakistan, and Ruth Anna is talking to us. Anna and Ruth, it's great to meet you in this table. We have all met before in the Human Rights Defenders Forum in Atlanta a couple of months ago. I want to welcome you to this table and thank you both. I know that it's quite early where you are, so thank you for joining us today. And I'm gonna start our conversation by giving you some time to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your work. Start with you. Start.
Ruth Anna, did you say? I'm sorry.
Yeah,
okay.
Yes.
Okay, so thank you for having me. It's really great to see both of you again. I am from a tribal community in western North Dakota called Mandaree, which is located on the Fort Berthold Indian Reservation. So I am also an American citizen, but I'm also a citizen of a sovereign nation, a tribal nation, the Mandan, Hidatsa, and Arikara Nation. And currently I am a consultant for Honor the Earth and Sacred Pipe Resource Center. My background related to this topic is I did run for public office in the 2016 election. I ran in a statewide race for insurance commissioner. And also I did contract work with the ACLU of North Dakota, focused on Standing Rock this past winter, January through March. And so happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Off to you, Negat. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about yourself and your organization, and what is your organization's mission, so people can get more familiar with both of you?
Sure. So I'm based in Pakistan. I'm by training I'm a lawyer, but I founded Digital Rights Foundation in 2012, and the mission and the vision of the organization was to introduce the work on internet freedom in Pakistan. At that time, there was a huge thing going on in Arab countries about digital revolution, and there were like so many things happening in Pakistan at the same time, and not only in Pakistan, around the world. There's internet censorship, the attacks on human rights defenders, the activism that they were doing online, the way people were attacking them online, and also state authorities. So that's where we thought it's very important to look into this area and sort of see what governments are doing, what authorities are doing, what non-state actors are doing, and how people can use social media and internet and information and communication technology safely, securely, effectively, and strategically for their work. So that's basically what we do here. We also work on online violence against women in Pakistan and trying to see how we can address the issue, not only for the young women and girls who are using internet in developing countries, but also the women human rights defenders as well.
Wow, that is impressive, and both of you are doing amazing work. Before I move on to our second question, I'm going to remind our audience that this is being aired live on Facebook, so facebook.com/forumonwomen and youtube.com/ Forum on Women. You can also visit the website to see the live stream. And for hashtags, you can use Freedom from Fear. You can use, you can also tag the Forum on Women if you think that you're hearing interesting things that you want to share. You can share them with that hashtag. You can also submit questions online and on Twitter for us in the next half of our chat. We will make sure that we are taking as much questions as possible from our audience. And so Anna, Ruth, Anna, and Negat, you are both digital security for human rights defenders. We all know that the digital world is something that can mobilize societies in our current time, and it can be used in a lot of ways. And so for both of you, can you please share with us, our organization used social media to public towards a certain act, and how did you do that?
Okay, so how I can, what comes to mind is the work that I did. I did a 3-month contract with the ACLU of North Dakota that focused on Standing Rock. And during that time period, there was a lot of safety concerns, of course, for the various human rights that were being violated by water protectors, people who were basically sharing their concerns, the concerns of people over profit, big corporations. And so wanting to have clean water, clean air, clean soil, clean land for future generations is a basic human right that our indigenous peoples across the world are very in tune with. So what comes to mind is a campaign that I saw firsthand being used through social media with the ACLU of North Dakota in trying to persuade the governor of North Dakota to pay attention and to change his approach with the law enforcement. So there was a social media campaign that was trying to urge Governor Burgum of North Dakota to take a look at the use of excessive force that was being used by law enforcement against the water protectors. So again, using a social media campaign, the ACLU has a huge base of supporters throughout the country, across the world. And so that was a great way that I saw firsthand people mobilizing through social media, calling and emailing our governor of North Dakota, urging him to take a look, to re-examine the use of excessive force by law enforcement.
Wow, that's impressive. That's actually a great example on how to use social media to do something good, just as it can be used to do a lot of bad things. And in the world we are living in today, important for each organization, I guess, to have its presence on social media, to be able to mobilize as many people as it can to the mission to serve others. I guess that campaign was a good example, so thank you very much for sharing that with us. Negat, do you want to share with us an experience for your organization on mobilizing public to create change in the community in terms of digital security?
Yeah, thank you so much, Abir. I guess we have used social media several times for raising different issues, in especially related to Pakistani society. And one of the main issue, which is of my concern and my organization concern is the issues related to women rights, the kind of patriarchy that women face not only in the offline spaces but now in the online spaces when they try to reclaim these spaces. So we have I would so among so many incidents that we have raised on social media, I would discuss one where a social media celebrity called Kandil Baloch, who was basically using Facebook as a platform to reclaim her sexuality and the way she wanted to use it. But she was, at the end of the day, she was honor killed by her own brother. But the people on internet really used the medium to shame her, to belittle her, and to tell her how dare a woman can use online platform in country like Pakistan or in an Islamic society. So when she was killed, women activists and feminists in Pakistan, they got together and then they used and reclaimed social media to condemn her killing, which was really difficult even for the condemnation. And we faced backlash in Pakistan the way we sort of use social media to condemn her murder. But I think that incident raised a lot of awareness about the gender inequality, about reclaiming our online spaces, about the importance of social media, internet, and ICTs for women, where they don't find spaces in the offline or in the physical world. So that's where a lot of media, got attracted towards the issue. They raised the issue. I won't say that the parents of Kandil got justice, but at least we were able to raise the issue. We were able to raise the issue of honor killing in Pakistan. And after a few months, government of Pakistan passed a legislation on honor killing in Pakistan, which is a massive issue right now.
Wow, that is such a powerful story, and I want to come back to what you said about spaces. So on social media, just like in real life, you can be harassed. Social media today, there are a lot of ways to harass others if we're capable of using social media to do that. And especially people who get harassed on social media, they're normally minorities or women, and a lot of other minorities that we see, unfortunately. So social media is thing that some people use as a weapon against others. It's such a powerful story to reclaim women to be from like moving social media from actually being against her to be with her. And also one of the politicians changed something because of that story. So that was such a powerful example. And with that example, I'm going to move to our next question, which is actually about gender equality. So what role does gender inequality play on the internet, and how does it affect women and girls? So how can we protect these women? How can we get them heard on social media? How can we protect them to say things they need to say without being subject to harassment?
A lot of things come to mind. As an Indigenous woman, we know that I believe it's 1 out of 3 Indigenous women will be raped in their lifetime. There's huge alarming disparities in how our that statistic there just shows a small snapshot of what Indigenous women face. And so in the new day of technology and the internet, social media, there's a lot more bullying and harassment that occurs over social media, especially to those women who are vocal and who are using or exercising their voice more than others, they become targets. And so that is a grave concern that many people have within the Indigenous community. Again, I cannot speak for all Indigenous communities, but I can speak for on behalf of myself and what I have seen in my lived experience, and also myself being harassed via social media. When we had first moved back to North Dakota in 2014, naturally getting involved with the community, and we had organized a peaceful demonstration in solidarity with Ferguson, and our pictures and names were all over social media, you know, from the news media coverage that we received. And so this peaceful demonstration was organized by all women. We were all in graduate school. However, I found that I was the only one getting a lot of hate messages in my other inbox through Facebook, because I would reach out to my colleagues, you know, and ask, did anybody else receive these messages? And that's when I found out that I was the only one, and I was the only woman of color in this group of women who had organized this peaceful demonstration. So that's one example, I guess, firsthand, but also there's other examples that many women face, especially throughout this past year among the water protectors, where women are targeted by various agencies, private companies, and law enforcement.
That's right. Actually, just to reinforce what you just said, in a lot of countries are the first group to be receptive to what the first group who take initiative to bring change to their societies, to the lives of their and children and society in a broader term. And when they try to speak, a lot of women around the world are today trapped in societies where they are not allowed to speak in that way, where they are not allowed to raise their voice against a lot of issues that they face every day because they are women. So how can we, Nagat, you are a digital security expert. So how can we, what are some tips to create space that's safe for women to talk if they don't have the space in their societies? How can we create a safe space online for them to speak up? How can we protect them? How can we make sure that they are heard?
I guess, Abir, it's very important that women, we really shouldn't be the protection for women, you know, in a sense that they have to take this agency, they have to reclaim these spaces by themselves. And for that, we can, you know, we can sort of empower them in a way that they can reclaim these spaces by themselves. I feel that you know, I'm not sure about the Western countries or the developed countries, but I think that digital literacy is becoming part of their textbooks and in the schools, and you know, but countries like Pakistan, where we have access to technology, where you know, internet is very economical, where smartphone is very cheap to buy, I think it's very important that the people should know, or it's basically the responsibility of the state and the government to raise awareness around online safe spaces or digital literacy. Women, I feel that especially in my context, you know, it's easy to tell them to reclaim these spaces, but also we need to see the deep-rooted patriarchy, how it plays out, the harassment, the bullying, the doxing, the sexual, you know, the slurs, the abuses that they face online basically is the product of the offline behaviors of men around us. So it's very important that, you know, not only talking about what are the digital security tips, you know, how they can, you know, how the way they know about the social media safe security and privacy settings, but I think also the courage to fight back is very important. And that's what we tell women in Pakistan, that it's important to know about the tools, important to know how to make a strong password, important to know what the social media privacy settings are and how they can make their accounts. Also, what are the people in their friends list? Are they people that they can trust with their photographs, with their data, what the things that they are saying? That they know about the legal remedies if if they face harassment? Do they know any legislation and authorities? Along with these information, I think it's also important to equip them with the voice. And most of them, when even they
Exactly.
know about all of this, they cannot voice their concerns.
Exactly. So to sum up what you said, what I can take out of this very thoughtful and really great answer is that we need to empower women. We need to give tools to women, be able to defend their own rights in these spaces, and the more they know, able to get out of that circle. And with that great answer, I'm going to move on to our for today. And it says, according to reports, one of the major roadblock female activists face when dealing with online activism of harassment, rape, and death. Have you been faced with such threats, and how did you deal with it? Ruth Anna, you said that you have been faced with some threats before when you went out on that protest. Can you go deeper for us through that experience, and how did you face that?
Yes. So that experience in receiving the harassment through social media, through my Facebook, it's the other inbox that these messages go to because it's from people who you are not friends with. And so after visiting with colleagues on that situation, a colleague of mine had suggested that I report this to our campus security because I, at the time, was a graduate school student. And so that struck me as, I had never thought of that. I thought of course, reporting it to the police, the local law enforcement. But at the time, I didn't think of reporting it to our university, our campus security. So I believe that's a good, those are good tools to know, in trying to, like what Najat said too, is to equip our women with these tools. So that's something that comes to mind, is that really making others aware of like what their options are, what their recourse is, should they face these types of harassment, because ultimately I believe these forms of harassment are put in place to cause fear in people so that we will then not to silence us, so that we won't continue to speak up. And it does take courage. But as a mother too, I'm a mother, and so you have to think of your children and your family's safety too. So that is something that is always at the forefront when you decide to take a stand.
Yes, normally women are more concerned about the lives of people, of those who are around them. They take more thoughtful steps towards anything they do. But we, as both of you mentioned, we need to make sure that these tools. So you said that you didn't really know that you can report this to the university. So I see in this case, maybe if the university had put like some announcement or told you in the classes that if you are subject, if you feel that you were subject online, you can report that. Maybe there is a system to make these more to the surface, more inform these women with these systems, and that they can use them to protect their lives.
Especially, yes.
If you, yeah.
I was going to say
that's right.
Especially because the peaceful demonstration that we held, in support of solidarity with Ferguson, it was held on campus too. So that made a difference. But.
Yeah, and it was all held by women. So actually, so when what initiative initiatives, we need to make sure that aware of the systems that can help them to lead on the projects or on the rights defending projects that they're Nagat, I don't know if you have an experience of being harassed online or receiving threats that you had yourself that you want to share with us. Also,
Yeah.
like some came that. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I think there are like several incidents. You know, the harassment has happened to that level where I have become so stubborn that I really don't care. In the beginning, you know, it was like I used to get very nervous and I didn't know how to deal with these harassers and bullies and bullies. And sometime I used to you know, engage with them. Sometimes I used to block them. And sometimes, you know, engaging you know, resulted in a you know, like as a positive you know, outcome. However, most of the time they just, if they are trolls, they just like keep busy you in trolling. And you know, sometimes trolling the troll is a good idea, sometimes not. So I think it actually depends on, you know, like it's your personal choice. You see how much support you have. So what we do basically, when we see that they're like campaign, or if they're like a lot of masculinity on social media, and then like men are like sort of, or bullies or trolls or harassers are sort of joined, and you know, they are together in attacking some woman, which is basically happening today. Is also one thing where a prominent lawyer was attacked in a court, and now several women rights activists and feminists today in Pakistan basically doing this campaign on Twitter and supporting her. But there are lots of troll who are, you know, like attacking us. I think it's a good idea to talk to your offline supporters. In this digital age, there are lots of people who are on social media. They're using it. We have millennials, we have digital natives, and it's important to strategize when you try to you know, engage with the trolls or harassers. And then, you know, if you have a lot of people who are backing you online, that's a very good idea, because then, you know, sometimes the trolls just, you know, they take a step back, and then they don't engage with you. Sometimes it's important to block them when you sort of get a sense that this online trolling can, you know, sort of result in a offline harassment. And reporting them to the social media companies are very, very important. Also, taking screenshots as an evidence is very important, because when you report to the social media companies, they also sometimes ask for evidence, also the authorities in your own respective jurisdictions. So these are the things that we do.
Wow. So I actually learned a lot of things from this answer. I mean, when you said you should submit these things and take screenshots, all this advice, I'm sure that it was a very informative, technical answer to people who were in a similar position as you. And I can imagine that you are an example of an empowered woman who knows exactly what are the tools she needs to use in such situations. So it's great to talk to you about this subject, and thank you both for sharing these experiences and these tips on how you faced them and how you overcame them. And now I'm going to move to our last question before we go to our audience. Our last question says, in your opinion, how can governments and digital rights, how can we push governments to be our ally in this project? How do you see that? Let's start with you, Anna.
Well, that's an interesting question in today's day and age. Currently, especially with the United States government and the challenges that we see and face. So I know that when I ran for insurance commissioner for North Dakota, a concern cyber attacks for insurance, you know, for consumers. But today we see a lot of challenges. So along those lines with cybersecurity attacks and identity theft and all of this other information via technology, that tells us that we need to modify our approaches, and we also need to update our policies, which include our protection, our constitutional rights and protections, that should reflect the current state of affairs today with the use of technology and how fast everything is changing. So we need to catch up with our policies, need to reflect the times that we are in to properly protect our constitutional rights, especially the First Amendment rights and the Fourth Amendment.
Yes, I cannot say anything but agreeing to everything you said. Policies are a very strong tool to educate people, to let the public, you know, it's something that affects the lives of people on the ground, and there's nothing more powerful than to create these policies to be in the best interest of people. Nagat, in your opinion, how can we push governments to be our ally in this? How can we use them as a tool to inform the public more about online harassment, digital rights, and such issues?
I think we also it's very important to sort of raise the issue around cyber harassment, online violence, and digital safety. But it's also important to note that a lot of governments around the world are repressing online speech, and it's because that lots of people are finding these online spaces very useful to raise their criticism on government policies or government actions, or even non-state actors' actions. So I think we need to see that most of the time governments are really not ready to work with the human rights defenders to strengthen the freedom of speech in the online spaces, and it is being stifled most of the time by them. But I think what we have done in Pakistan, that we have pushed government to take up the issue of cyber harassment against young women and girls, and we have managed to create our own cyber harassment helpline here in Pakistan. What we basically do is that we tell callers about that how they can use the law of the land, and how they can actually file a complaint to the authority, which is Federal Investigation Agency in Pakistan. So the Federal Investigation Agency has started getting a lot of calls and a lot of complaints, because people who get to know about the system and about the filing complaints, they reach out to them. So it's actually pushing the government indirectly, that these are the issues that they need to work on, and now they are actually looking into it and making reforms and policies. And they actually introduced a legislation which is actually overall a very bad legislation when we look into the freedom of speech, but there are some provisions which look into the online violence and harassment and abuse. So it's at least some sort of progress.
Yes, exactly. So I'm gonna just back up what you just said. Platforms we can imagine the online world just as real life. So just as you can make a protest in front of the door of that politician, you can also make a protest online, and it's like calling them in public in real life. And so pressure on some governments that unfortunately are spread all over the world now, governments that work unfortunately against minorities, against women, against all these really critical issues that human rights activists are trying to take forward. There is also a power that's trying to drag you backwards, but stay strong, knock on the door, and I believe that the more people know what to stand against such acts and to push forward, to keep pushing forward. That was our fifth question for our discussion. We are now going to open it to the public. So I'm going to try and read some of the questions that I'm receiving in the chat. I think we covered this one. What can everyday citizens do, rights defenders online? This is one of the questions.
So I can respond to that. I think it's as I said, I covered it in our conversation previously, that the people who are using online spaces, I think if they cannot go to the protest, if they cannot attend, meetings, or they cannot go to the courts when some important hearings are happening, I think they can use social media to raise awareness about that. That's what we are doing, see what is the hashtag that the people are using, just like start sharing their own opinions using that hashtag, or use Facebook to to post their own comments. I mean, there are like so many features on social media that they can use. So I think these are the mediums that people can actually use to support human rights and to support human rights defenders who are basically talking about everyday human rights violations in our lives.
Exactly. So if we look at any of us, Ruth Anna or Nagat, how many petitions have you signed before? This is one form that that is open to public to support people, isn't it? So support can come in so many different ways, other than actually, for example, giving money or funding. You can participate in so many ways to defend the rights of another human who needs you. That could be signing a petition or putting your voice out there to support these people. Ruth Anna, I felt.
Yeah.
Do you want to add anything else, or?
Yes, I agree wholeheartedly that ways that everyday citizens can help support human rights defenders online is to help spread the word, and to it just reminds me of the notion of trying to reach across the table, so to speak. So one person can convince or make a difference to others, or help change hearts and minds of others who stand in opposition of different movements that are happening in today's day and age. So just helping spread the word, and by trying to change perspectives out there, because in North Dakota, a lot of our media is very saturated. It's very biased against any sort of form of human rights defenders. And so when you think of this huge population in the state of North Dakota who relies solely on North Dakota media, whether it's through the television or through the radio or newspaper, they are being misinformed of what's really happening on the ground. And so through social media, that is where the truth is being told a lot of times from others who are on the ground and sharing their perspective. That is not being, their perspective has a long history of being left out of the media.
Exactly. Well, I can imagine this as also, so human rights defenders are normally the people who take the initiative and the biggest risk to stand against something or to push for the rights of other people. So as everyday citizen, one of the simplest thing we can do is just rally behind them, just stand behind these people who are taking the risk, who are taking the initiative to defend the rights of others, and with this I'm going to move to a deeper question that will take us deeper into this conversation. So when you acquire more power or more tools and know how to deal with things, and you take the initiative to stand for something, that comes also with risks. So the question is, are there any challenges human rights defenders face when trying to obtain these tools? So are there also people who are aware or who are making sure that the people who should be getting these tools don't get them, so they don't stand against something. So up to you if you who would like to answer. Roth Anna or Nagat?
I think one thing that I have noticed that people, the human rights defenders who are using different tools while they are being online, and it's also important that what tools are important for them. Sometimes in difficult and complicated jurisdictions, there's tools that are made by the developers sitting in the Silicon Valley, really don't work for them. These tools are illegal to use in particular jurisdictions. So it's very important for the human rights defenders, while using some tools, to maybe, to use anonymous internet, or maybe to secure themselves more, or maybe to use encryption. I mean, they really need to be careful that whether these tools are allowed in their local laws or not. And that's where I think the responsibility lies on the tool developers. And here, as a digital security trainer, I always say this to the people who are sitting outside, in developed countries making these tools, that please connect with the human rights defenders working on ground. Please tell them, talk to them what kind of tools will work for their particular context, something that they are spending millions on. If that is not useful, someone who is working in Pakistan, that tool is then not useful, and then can put people at risk, actually. So these are the things that, I would like to highlight, that human rights defenders should be very careful the tools that they are using.
Okay, thank you so much for that answer. And we are receiving more questions here. So I'm going to take the next question and rephrase it in a way. So just like we said earlier in this chat, that the digital world is called world for something. It's just like real life world. So the question says, what can governments do to protect citizens or digital rights activists? And I would imagine that the police, as the police officer, so the government functions have like a lot of structures where you can report crime in real life. So do you think that there could be more incorporation, or to incorporate digital rights police, if I want to say it, more into the government structures? Do you see this as something could happen later? Are you trying to achieve something like that, to create the government on these specific issues?
It's I think that to do that is going to be very challenging, just because we live in a time where companies are profiting from our information, our internet access, private companies, as far as like what just our personal information.
Yeah.
And so I think that that's going to be a challenge, if because we live in a day and age where profit matters more over people. And so I think that's a challenge there across the board. Even I have a public health background, and so even just looking at prevention for healthy living versus pharmaceutical companies and prescriptions, so it's just across the board where I feel like this is just another symptom of profits benefiting companies versus protecting humans or people's privacy.
Yeah. And also I want to add to that is that for this question, governments are not always, so the question is, what can governments do to protect citizens' digital rights? Some governments don't want these rights to exist because they can be used against them. Just like the case in Pakistan, for example, and a lot of other countries. Unfortunately, it's like even more widely spread the case of governments who are against all these things that are related to digital security and human rights defenders, the protecting of human rights defenders, because these tools, if the public know them, they can use it against them. But just like Nugget was saying earlier, we will keep pushing against such acts and such, such policies that affect the public, and we can only try our best to inform the government of what's going on. Nugget, did you want to add something to this question?
Yeah, I think it's very important to resist, the actions that the governments take or the authorities that they take. And I have seen this resistance happening in my own country. It's sometimes also very important that the governments are not aware that what are the responsibilities they have under different international conventions and treaties that they have signed on and ratified. And I'm so glad that the United Nations Special Rapporteur David Kay and other Special Rapporteur on privacy on the right to privacy, they are actually pushing governments while sending them letters and telling them that the actions that they are taking against internet users, or while censoring internet or shutting down internet or networks, these are against the UN treaties that they have signed on. So governments, so these agencies are pushing back, which also sort of give power to the citizens to speak up based on the statements that these authorities issue. So I think it's important to keep pushing back. Sometimes governments are not aware of what they are doing, and sometimes this awareness comes from our own resistance. So that's where what I see in Pakistan. And there are some, like, there are people in the government who really want to change things, and I think we really need to find these champions not only within our communities but also within within the government, that what these champions can do to protect our digital rights.
Exactly. I like what you said about, like, sometimes governments don't know the details of the things they signed on. So maybe if we take these promises that governments sign, it's like this job contract that you're very excited about. It's such a great job, and you just sign the contract without reading anything. So I guess if we take that contract and study it more and try to go in an informative way to the government, telling them that this is what you have signed, this is your promise to the people, and this is what you should be honest about and deliver on, to sign. It's basically the job that you do every day is to make the people's life better. Time is ticking, and I'm to our question, and the question is anonymous on the internet, and does that affect your message?
I'm not sure if Ruth will answer, so I'll just take up on this question. I think anonymity on the internet is very easy, but we also need to be very careful that in some jurisdictions, anonymity is also illegal. So virtual private networks are, other tools where people can use it, and then they can be anonymous. However, I'm not sure if the anonymity sort of affects the strength of the message or affect the impact of the message. However, at the same time, I feel when the people with real identities, with lots of followers, when they tweet something, or when they, just take an example of a celebrity, when they tweet or when they post something on Facebook, the way people spread that message, because they have the real identity there, that has maybe more effect. But this doesn't doesn't impact the importance of anonymity. I see anonymity as a right, and I also see that lots of governments are pushing back and authorities are pushing back, because there is this discussion going on that due to anonymity, there are lots of criminals out there who commit cybercrime, and then they can get away with it. So there is like this blurred line between the right to anonymity and the and also using online spaces while being
Mhm. For that really technical answer. And now off to my next question. How identifiable ally in the government? So it's not all people who work in the government have the same mentality. They are humans too. So how can we identify our allies, and what kind of message should we be communicating to them to let them know that we are there and that they can Earth Anna, I see that you're...
Yeah, sure. So I think it's definitely important to reach across the table or reach out to people who are considered our weak ties. Oftentimes we tend to stay within our comfort zones and only reach out to strong tie networks. So reaching across the table to weak tie networks is definitely something that must be done in strengthening our ally pool, and just really finding ways to speak, or finding ways to find this common ground, and also in finding a way to speak the same language to where you will be heard. So just really trying to break through barriers. But as an Indigenous woman in North Dakota, I find myself oftentimes having to do a lot of educating before an actual conversation can start or begin. But yes, definitely it's important to find champions who can help carry your message forward.
Thank you so much. I like what you said about you find educating is most likely to get into the next conversation. And I guess these people who exist in government who are a potential rights activists, most of them, they don't know about you, like they don't know that you are doing this kind of activity, and they would support you if they only knew that what you're doing. So finding these, identifying people at these times is not very hard, like to be able to tell how this people, and like what is the potential that this person is going to respond to me and try to help me is kind of like easier to figure out, especially that we have the digital world, which is our conversation today. And so trying to find what are their opinions about certain issues, read some of the things they wrote about certain issues, and figure out whether they support certain ideas that you're working on, and contact them. Mm-hmm. Always don't be afraid of making that contact. Even if it didn't work, you at least tried. Mm-hmm. So I'm reading here the last thought, as we have 5 minutes. Time flew really quickly. I'm reading a last thought question. So if there is one thing activists and or supporters can do to improve security, or use digital tools, or use the use of digital tools for human rights activists, what would that be?
I think there is no one thing. It's like collection of lots of things, and I think the people who are using social media or information and communication technology for activism or to raise violations of human rights, they should be very aware of the platforms that they are using. They should be aware about the security and privacy settings of those platforms. The tools that they can use is like small little things that I always tell in my trainings, that do you know how to make a strong passwords? And sometimes people make passwords for years and use one password for all their accounts. So these are the small little tips that like the human rights defenders can actually adopt about their password, about the hygiene of their computers, about the if they are saying something sensitive online, how to be anonymous before using that, and like for instance the antiviruses of their computers and mobile phones. And also everything is available online. There is a like bulk of knowledge about digital security in the online space. So just Google that. I'm sorry, I just named the company, but that's that's where we can find everything. So just Google about things, and then they can find like number of resources about digital safety and online security. But please be careful when you post something sensitive. Think about that, and think how secure your digital devices and how secure you are physically and your surroundings are. So that's basically called a risk assessment that every human rights defender should do.
Thank you very much for such deep technical questions. I had one just now, which I think we covered. Are there any specific resources where to begin? I guess what you answered just now is like, begin with Google, even though we're naming the company, but always make a search before you make an activity.
So Abir, just want to add one thing, that I think Electronic Frontier Foundation in US is doing amazing work on this. So just go on their website. They will find a lot of digital security resources there. The Frontline Defenders, their website has lots of resources. Tactical Technology Collective has lots of resources, and then we have a website which is called hamarainternet.org. It has lots of resources on digital security. So number of resources out there.
That's great. And concluding now with 2 minutes with really small technical question. Is there a way to tell if you are being monitored online?
Myself, I don't know. It would be nice if there was. I mean, I, like many others, I believe, are getting a lot of fake Facebook requests, like on the average, at least 5 to 7 a day. And so I feel like I'm doing my part as a citizen in reporting this to Facebook for review. But yeah, that would be, I know Naget is a wealth of information, and she helped me, with my digital security. I attended her digital clinic when we were in Atlanta, the Carter Center, and that was very helpful. But yeah, that would be.
But that is a symptom. Like what you said is actually useful now, because as a normal person who's not going too deep into the technical things, that is a symptom. So if you're receiving a lot of like abnormal amount or number of requests or links or whatever on your social media accounts, just like of that before you take the next step. So I don't know, Nagat, if you want to add anything to this before we conclude this very beautiful roundtable for today. Do you want to add something?
I think just a final thought on this, Abir, that nobody has, so there are like authorities around the world and governments who are using sophisticated surveillance technologies to monitor activists and human rights defenders. But sometimes we also give them chance to monitor them. They really don't need to use these technologies, because when your posts are public, when your tweets are public, when you are checking and you are telling people that you have checked into this particular place at this particular time, you are giving them all the information. So they are automatically monitoring you. So exactly. I think these are the precautions that the human rights defender should take while using ICTs and social media.
Okay, and with that we came to 1 hour of a very rich and great discussion with both of you. I'm so happy to be able to be in this roundtable with you today after we all met in the forum in Atlanta, and I hope that we meet again soon in roundtables and also in different activities as human rights defenders. Thank you both for all the insights and experiences that you have brought to this table today, and big thank you to the Carter Center for holding this, and thank you also to our audience who were interacting and asking questions and raising issues with us. Just a reminder here is that this will be archived at the Forum on Women cartercenter.org, and you are going to be able to watch this full video, this full conversation over there. Thank you very much for staying with us, and we hope to see you in the next roundtable very soon. And keep on checking the website to get more information about the next activities.
Could I add one more thing? I'm sorry. I feel like I need to do this justice. In focusing on Standing Rock too, I wanted to mention a couple of things that, you know, definitely in the challenges that we face today, I see that there are strong allies like the ACLU and many others who are taking action in the courts to hold our governments accountable. And then also the other question about how do you know if you're being monitored? I think that many on the ground activists and fraud protectors who have been in the thick of things for years can have some very clear answers on that as well. And just wanting to add that the Tiger Swan documents that showed that people were being monitored also, you know, by private companies. So I just wanted to make sure I did that justice and making sure I added those two pieces to the discussion.
Thank you very much. Thank you. That was really valuable information from both of you. Thank you very much, and hopefully see you in more roundtables, and check out the website for more great discussions. And if you enjoyed this one, tweet, tag the Forum on Women, and stay active online. Thank you.